My son. He cut me right out of Christmas. He told me his wife wanted an intimate Christmas. Just her family and the investors. Me, the mother who worked double shifts for 40 years to build that wealth. I wasn't considered family enough to step foot on the property that was still in my name. I was standing in the kitchen of my house here in Georgia, finishing up tagging the last of the Christmas gifts. There was wrapping paper scattered all over the oak table. That same table where me and my late husband Otis used to sit every Sunday for coffee. The smell of cinnamon was still hanging in the air from the cake I'd just pulled out of the oven. I was going to take it to the lake house. The old leather suitcases, the ones I bought at a Macy's sale 15 years ago, were leaning against the door, ready to go. The cooler with all the ingredients for the supper I was going to start fixing as soon as I got there. It was sitting right there, red lid shining under the kitchen light. That's when my cell phone buzzed on the table. I picked it up, adjusting my reading glasses that always hung on a little chain around my neck. It was a message from my son, James. When I read it, I felt that familiar tightness in my chest, the one I'd been ignoring for almost a decade. The message said, "Mom, change of plans. Don't come to the lake house. Sophia wants an intimate Christmas, just her family and investors. We'll talk on New Year's." I read it again and again. Just her family. That phrase just kept ringing in my head, over and over again. I felt my hands start to shake. I looked at those suitcases, at the cooler, at all the gifts wrapped in that gold paper I picked out with so much care at Target. There was one for Harper, my 8-year-old granddaughter, one for Mason, my 6-year-old grandson, and one for James and Sophia. I wasn't family enough. But before I go on, you need to understand how we got to this mess. My name is Bernice Walker. I turned 65 recently, but back then I was 64, and until that day, December 23rd, my biggest worry was whether I could get the turkey as juicy as Otis always did. I live in a comfortable townhouse in a historic black middle-class neighborhood right here in Atlanta, Georgia. The house is paid for. I raised my son James in this house. Otis passed away from cancer in this house 7 years ago, and it was in this same kitchen, where I was standing right then, that I decided I wasn't going to be treated like a doormat anymore. The lake house. Lord have mercy, that house. It's on Lake Oconee, about 75 miles from here in Atlanta. It's a beautiful property. Lake view, wooden deck, 3 bedrooms, stone fireplace, valued at around $2,800,000. Sounds like a lot of money, doesn't it? And it is. But that money didn't fall from the sky. It was the result of 40 years of saving. 40 years of me and Otis working our fingers to the bone. I was the head nurse at Grady Memorial Hospital. Otis was a mechanic. We met when he ended up in the ER with his hand crushed in a press. I took care of him. He asked me out 2 weeks later, hand still bandaged up. We got married 6 months later in a small ceremony at the neighborhood Baptist church. James was born a year and a half later. Otis always dreamed of that lake house. He'd say, "Bernie," he called me Bernie, "one day I'm going to build us a house on the lake, a place where we can rest, where James can bring the grandkids." We started saving when James was 5. Every extra penny went into the lake house account. I worked double shifts. Otis took extra jobs on the weekends. It took 25 years. 25 years of not going to Disney, of not buying a new car, of fixing the fridge instead of replacing it. But in 2013, we finally bought that property. Otis cried when he signed the deed. I held his hand, that hand I had bandaged in the hospital so many years ago, and I felt like every sacrifice was worth it. We had 3 summers in that house before Otis got his diagnosis. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4. He died in 2018, right here at home, holding my hand. His last words were, "Take care of our house, Bernie. It's for James and the grandkids." I promised. And let me tell you, I kept my promise. I took care of that house like it was a baby. Paid the electric bills, water, landscaping, insurance, everything. James and Sophia, his wife, started using the house for weekends right after Otis passed. At first, I thought it was good. I thought, at least the house isn't sitting empty. But little by little, you know when you realize things have shifted? It was like that. They stopped inviting me. I'd call asking if I could come for the holiday, and James would stall. Sophia always had an excuse. "Oh, Bernice, we're having some friends over, it's gonna be tight." Or, "We need some time just for us, you understand?" And me, like a fool, I swallowed it. I thought, they're young, they need their space. But that day, December 23rd, when I read that message, something just snapped inside me. Just her family and investors. Investors. They were going to throw a party. A party in my house. And I wasn't welcome. I didn't call James. I didn't cry. I didn't text back asking for an explanation. I just walked straight to the office, that little room in the back of the house where Otis used to keep his tools and where I now kept the important documents. I opened the gray safe, the one we bought at Home Depot back in 1990-something. The code was still James's birthday. I grabbed the deed to the property. The paper was there, slightly yellowed, folded inside a plastic folder. I looked at the name written in black letters, Bernice Elaine Walker. Just my name. Otis had insisted on that before he passed. He said, "If anything happens to me, I want you to be secure, Bernie. Put everything in your name." I held that paper in my hands, and I felt the weight of 40 years of work. I felt the weight of Otis's hands, calloused, rough, but always gentle. And I also felt a cold rage rising up my spine. I sat in the office chair, picked up my phone, and searched for a contact I hadn't called in over 2 years. Mr. Abernathy. William Abernathy. A real estate investor in Atlanta who had been eyeing that land for years. He had offered me $3 million for the property on 2 different occasions. I always refused. But now was different. My fingers were trembling when I dialed the number. It was 7:30 in the evening on a holiday eve. He was probably having dinner with his family, but he picked up on the 3rd ring. He said, "Bernice, is that really you? What a surprise." I spoke with the steadiest voice I could muster. "Mr. Abernathy, are you still interested in the lake property?" There was a pause on the other end. I heard the clink of silverware, voices in the background. Then he said, "Bernice, are you serious? It's a holiday eve." I replied, "I want to sell. As is. Lock, stock, and barrel. Cash offer. We close in 24 hours if you agree to $2,400,000. It's below market, I know. But I want immediate liquidity and the locks changed by noon tomorrow." On the other end of the line, Mr. Abernathy went silent for about 5 seconds. That felt like 5 minutes. I heard him take a deep breath. Then he said something I'll never forget. "Bernice, are you sure about this? That house. I know what it means to you and Otis." I looked at the deed in my hand. I ran my fingers over his name printed there below mine. And I said, "I am absolutely sure, Mr. Abernathy. Do you accept or not?" He said he accepted. We talked for another 15 minutes about the details. He was sending his lawyer with the documents the next morning, the 24th, at 8 a.m. Immediate bank transfer, all digital, all fast. He asked if I wanted to keep any furniture, anything at all. I said no. Let him have it all. I just wanted the locks changed before noon. When I hung up the phone, my hands were still shaking. But it wasn't fear. It was a strange mix of relief and anger. I had just sold, in 40 minutes of conversation, the result of 40 years of sacrifice. And you know what else? I didn't regret it. I sat there in the office for a while, staring at the walls. There was a framed photo of Otis fishing at the lake. Big, wide smile, holding a bass that must have weighed 6 or 7 pounds. He was wearing that old John Deere cap I begged him to throw away, but he never would. I remembered the day we took that picture. It was a Sunday in July, 2018. The sun was blazing hot. James had brought the whole family. Harper was just a baby. Sophia complained about the heat the entire time, but at least she went. Back then, I still had hope. You know, I need to tell you how things were before. Before Sophia. Before James turned into this person I don't recognize anymore. James was always a good boy, quiet, studious. He didn't give us trouble in his teens like the other boys in the neighborhood. Didn't mess with drugs, didn't join a gang, none of that. He got good grades, helped around the house, respected his elders. Otis was proud of him, said James was going to be someone in life. And he was, in a way. James graduated with a degree in business administration from Georgia State University. He did it with a partial scholarship and a lot of hard work from us. Me and Otis paid the rest. We pinched pennies, but we paid. James deserved it. At his graduation, I cried so much I smeared all my makeup. Otis had his hand on my shoulder, squeezing gently, so proud. We had done it. Our son, the first in the family to graduate college. It was right after graduation that James met Sophia. She worked at a financial consulting firm in Atlanta, one of those fancy companies with a glass building in Midtown. Sophia was different. She came from money. Her father owned a chain of car dealerships. Her mother, I don't think she ever worked a day in her life. Sophia dressed well, spoke well, had that way about her of someone who always had everything. In the beginning, I tried to like her. I swear I tried. When James brought her here to the house for the first time, I fixed a special dinner. I made roasted chicken with that seasoning Otis loved, mashed potatoes, salad, peach pie for dessert. We sat at this same kitchen table, all together. James was beaming. He looked at Sophia like she was the most precious thing in the world. Sophia was polite during dinner. She complimented the food, thanked us for the hospitality. But I noticed. You know when you feel someone is making an effort? She barely touched the chicken, kept poking at the food with her fork, smiling that tight little smile. When she thought I wasn't looking, I saw her check her watch twice. After they left, Otis said, "She seems nervous. First time meeting the family? It's normal." I wanted to believe him, but deep down, I already knew. Sophia wasn't for us, and worse, she thought we weren't for her. They dated for 2 years before getting married. During that time, James changed. Slowly, but he changed. He started making comments about the house. "Mom, don't you think it's time to renovate the kitchen? These Formica countertops are so 80s. Or, "Dad, don't you want to trade in that car? The guys at work talk when I get dropped off in your old Chevy." Otis laughed at those things. He thought it was just James wanting to modernize, wanting us to enjoy life. But I saw past it. I saw Sophia's hand in those comments. She was ashamed of us. The wedding was in 2016, a big ceremony at a country club where her family were members. 200 guests, everything very fancy, very expensive. Sophia's father paid. Otis and I gave $5,000 as a gift to the newlyweds. It was all we could do at the time. Sophia thanked us with a mechanical hug and that same tight smile. Harper was born a year later. Mason, 2 years after her. When Harper was born, I cried tears of joy. My first granddaughter. I went to the hospital as soon as James called to say Sophia was in labor. I stayed in the waiting room for 8 hours. When they finally let us into the room, Sophia was in bed, exhausted, holding the baby. James was beside her, eyes red with fatigue and joy. I approached slowly, afraid of disturbing them. I looked at that little face. Wrinkled, perfect. Harper had dark little hair, eyes closed, tiny hands clenched in fists. I reached out to touch her. Sophia let me, but I felt the tension in her body, like she had to make an effort to let me touch my own granddaughter. In the first few months, I saw Harper often. I went to their house, brought food, helped with whatever I could. But Sophia always had that way about her. That way of someone who is tolerating, not appreciating. One day, I was there helping to fold baby clothes. Sophia was on the phone with her mother. I heard her say, "No, Mom, Bernice is here again. I know, but what can I do? She's the mother-in-law." Again, like I was a pest. When Otis got sick in 2017, James started coming around more. He came to the house, helped with things, took Otis to appointments when I couldn't. I thought maybe, in the midst of all that pain, we had gotten our son back. But after Otis died, after the funeral, After the dust settled, James disappeared again, and the lake house, which was supposed to be the place where we gathered, turned into the place where they excluded me. I got up from the office and went back to the kitchen. The presents were still on the table. I looked at them, all wrapped with such care. I picked up Harper's gift. It was a painting kit, the kind with paints, brushes, and small canvases. She had told me one of the few times I saw her this year that she wanted to learn to paint. I picked up Mason's, a remote control car, one of those big ones that goes over any terrain. He loved cars, just like his grandpa. I picked up James and Sophia's gift. It was a basket of expensive wines I bought at a specialty shop, $280. I had never spent that much on a gift in my life, but I wanted to do something special, wanted to show that, despite everything, I still loved them. I looked at that basket and felt a huge urge to laugh or cry. I don't know. I grabbed my phone again, this time not to call anyone. It was to check something I was afraid to check. The banking app, specifically, the emergency credit card I had given James about 2 years ago. He said he needed it for unforeseen events. Just for emergencies, Mom. I swear, I believed him. I always believed him. I opened the app, went into the recent transactions section of the card, and what I saw made me sit down in the chair slowly, because my legs suddenly couldn't hold my weight anymore. 2 recent charges, both from that same day, December 23rd. The first one, $4,500 at a store called Premier Wine and Spirits in Buckhead, Atlanta, at 2:43 in the afternoon. The second one, $8,000 at a luxury catering service called Elite Events and Catering, at 3:17 in the afternoon, $12,500, in less than an hour, on my credit card. I stared at the phone screen, blinking slowly, trying to process. My first reaction was to think it was a mistake or fraud. Someone had cloned the card, but then I remembered. James had the card. He had the number, the PIN, everything, and he knew I almost never checked that account because it was just for emergencies. $4,500 in wine, $8,000 in catering. Intimate Christmas. I felt something rising in my throat. It wasn't a sob. It was a bitter, dry laugh that came out sounding more like a choke. I covered my mouth with my hand, alone in that kitchen, and let that laugh out. Because if I didn't laugh, I was going to break something. It wasn't an intimate Christmas. It was a party, a lavish, extravagant party to impress Sophia's investors, using my house and my money. I clicked to see more details of the transactions. The wine had been delivered directly to the lake house, the catering too. Delivery date, December 24th. Tomorrow, Christmas Eve. They were going to throw a party tomorrow with my $12,500 on my $2,800,000 property. And I wasn't welcome. I took 3 deep breaths, that technique we teach anxious patients at the hospital. In through the nose, hold for 3 seconds, out through the mouth. But it didn't help much, because the anger I was feeling wasn't the kind you breathe away. It was the kind that burns inside, slow, until it turns into embers. I opened the banking app again, went straight to the card management section, found the card that was in James's name, and clicked on Cancel Card. The app asked for the reason. I selected Unauthorized Use, Confirmed, Done, Card Canceled, but I didn't stop there. I went into my investment account. I had a retirement fund, some bonds, some stocks that Otis had bought years ago and that had appreciated. In total, it must have been about $400,000. Not much compared to the house, but it was my safety net. I transferred everything to an ironclad trust fund, the kind only I can access. Not James, not anyone. It took about 20 minutes of authentications and confirmations, but I did it. Every penny protected. Then I opened the browser on my phone and searched. Tickets to Jamaica. Montego Bay. I always wanted to go. Otis promised we'd go one day, but we never did. We never had time. Or money. Or both. I found a flight leaving the next morning, the 24th at 11:15. One way. First class. I had never flown first class in my life. The price was $1,200. I didn't even blink. Bought it. While I was doing all this, my phone started ringing. It was James. I looked at his name on the screen. Photo of him smiling. One of those candid shots. I pressed the red button. Decline call. He called again. Declined again. A text came through. Mom, we need to talk. Are you mad? It wasn't anything personal. It wasn't anything personal. I didn't reply. Left the message there, unanswered. I blocked the number. Blocked Sophia's number too. My phone went silent. I went back to the office. Mr. Abernathy had sent a message confirming that his lawyer, a Mr. Marcus Green, would arrive here at the house at 8 in the morning. He asked for the full address and said he would bring the transfer documents already prepared. All digital, electronic signature, immediate bank transfer. I replied confirming, gave the address, and I asked for one thing. Please make sure the locks on the property are changed before noon tomorrow. It is essential. Mr. Abernathy replied in less than 5 minutes. Understood, Bernice. I have a trusted locksmith. The locks will be changed by 11:30 a.m. You have my word. 11:30. My flight was leaving at 11:15. I was going to be in the air when James tried to enter the house, when he discovered the code didn't work. When he saw the security guard at the gate saying that property wasn't mine anymore, so it definitely wasn't his, I sat on the bed in my room. The house was silent. So silent I could hear the clock in the living room ticking. I looked at the closet. I needed to pack a bag, but not for the lake house, for Jamaica. I got up and started sorting through clothes, light dresses, sandals, sun hat, sunscreen. That swimsuit I bought 3 years ago and never wore because I always thought I was too old to wear a swimsuit. Put everything in a medium suitcase. Light, easy to carry. I looked in the closet mirror. I saw a 64-year-old woman, gray hair tied in a loose bun, tired eyes, wrinkles around the mouth and eyes, hands with bulging veins, marks of decades sticking needles into patients' veins. But I also saw strength. I saw someone who wasn't going to accept being treated like less than she deserved anymore. I finished packing the suitcase and left it in the bedroom. Went back to the kitchen. The gifts were still there on the table. I looked at them for a long time. Then I picked up Harper's gift and Mason's gift. Just those two. Left the others. Took the kids' gifts to the bedroom and put them next to my suitcase. I was going to mail them when I got to Jamaica. They would receive them. I wasn't going to leave my grandkids without a gift because of their parents' stupidity. James and Sophia's gift stayed on the kitchen table. Along with the cinnamon cake, I wasn't taking anymore. Along with the plans for a family Christmas that was never going to happen. The night passed slowly. I couldn't sleep much. Lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything in my head. Was I doing the right thing? Was I being too radical? But then I remembered the message. Just her family. I remembered the $12,500, and I knew there was no turning back. At 6 in the morning on the 24th, I got up, showered, got ready, put on comfortable clothes for travel. Beige linen pants, white blouse, flat sandals, hair tied back, small pearl earrings Otis gave me for our 20th anniversary. At 7:50 the doorbell rang. Mr. Marcus Green was a tall black man, maybe 50 years old, impeccable gray suit, leather briefcase in hand. He greeted me with a firm handshake and a professional smile. We sat in the living room. He opened the briefcase and took out a tablet. Explained the whole process. The transfer would be done as soon as I signed the documents digitally. $2,400,000 would hit my account within 2 hours. The property would be transferred to Mr. Abernathy's name immediately. All legal, all registered. He asked if I was sure. One last time. I looked at him and said, absolutely. I signed the documents with my finger on the tablet screen. 3 signatures. Simple as that. 40 years of sweat summed up in 3 taps on a screen. Mr. Green smiled, put the tablet away, shook my hand again and said, "It was a pleasure doing business with you, Mrs. Walker. Mr. Abernathy asked me to pass on a message. He said, 'This property will be well taken care of. Thank you for the trust.'" I thanked him. walked him to the door. When he left, I closed the door slowly and leaned against it. Done. It was done. I looked at the clock. 9:15. My taxi to the airport would arrive in half an hour. The lock on the lake house would be changed in 2 hours. I grabbed my suitcase, grabbed my purse, took one last look at the house. This house where I raised James, where Otis died, where I built my life. And I walked out. The taxi arrived promptly at 9:45. A friendly Haitian gentleman, 40-something, who helped me with the suitcase and asked if I was visiting family. I said no, that I was going to spend some time alone. He smiled and said, "Good for you, ma'am. Everybody needs peace." Peace. The word echoed in my head the whole ride to Hartsfield-Jackson Airport. Traffic was heavy because of the holiday, but I didn't care. I kept looking out the window, watching Atlanta pass by. The leafless trees, the gray winter sky, people rushing from one side to the other with gift bags. At the airport, I checked in, first class. The lady at the counter looked at me with that professional smile and said, "Mrs. Walker, you've been upgraded to our premium service, priority boarding, lounge access. Have an excellent flight." I thanked her and headed to the lounge. I had never stepped foot in one of those places in my life. It was nice. Comfortable armchairs, free food, drinks, huge TVs playing the news. I sat in an armchair near the window and ordered an iced tea from the lady serving. I looked at my phone. It had been on airplane mode since I left the house. No notifications, no messages. Silence. The flight left on time. 11:15. I settled into the wide first-class seat, accepted the glass of champagne the flight attendant offered, and looked out the window as the plane took off. Atlanta got small down below. The clouds swallowed everything, and I felt, for the first time in years, that I could really breathe deep. I arrived in Montego Bay at 2:40 in the afternoon, local time. The heat hugged me as soon as I stepped off the plane. A humid, delicious heat that smelled like sea and flowers. I took a taxi to the hotel I had booked last minute. A modest but well-rated resort facing the sea. Nothing fancy, just a quiet place. The room was simple. Double bed, balcony with an ocean view, ceiling fan spinning slowly. I left the suitcase on the floor, opened the balcony doors, and stepped out. The sea was a turquoise blue I had never seen in person. The sand, white. The sound of the waves, mesmerizing. I stood there, leaning on the balcony railing, just looking, letting the sun hit my face, feeling the salty wind in my hair. And for the first time since I read that message from James, I cried. Not from sadness, from relief, from freedom. That afternoon, I went down to the beach, walked barefoot in the sand, sat in a beach chair, and ordered an iced tea at the bar. The waiter, a young Jamaican man with a wide smile, brought me the tea with a slice of lime and said, "Enjoy paradise, ma'am." I said I would. I went 3 days without turning on my phone, 3 days of absolute peace. I woke up with the sun, had breakfast on the balcony, read books I bought at the hotel shop, walked on the beach, had fresh seafood for lunch, took naps in the afternoon. At night, I dined alone at the hotel restaurant, talked to other tourists, went back to the room, and slept like I hadn't slept in years. I didn't think about James. I didn't think about the house. I didn't think about anything other than the sound of the waves and the taste of the iced tea. But while I was there, drinking in peace with every sip, 100 miles from Atlanta, chaos was setting in. I only learned the full details later, through the police reports and the letters James sent me from prison. But here is exactly what happened. James was driving his silver Range Rover down the road leading to the property. It was December 24th, around 3 in the afternoon. In the back seat were Harper and Mason, quiet, looking out the window. In the passenger seat, Sophia was checking her phone for the 1,000th time, confirming the details of the party happening the next day. It was raining that afternoon, a gray, heavy sky. James told me later that the tension in the car was unbearable. James told me Sophia was a wreck, biting her lower lip. He said she was terrified about impressing those 2 big investors, people who could put serious money into her company. and the lake house was the perfect setting. Luxurious, exclusive, impressive. James tried calling me again during the drive, for the 10th time that day. Nothing. Voicemail. He must have thought it was strange because I always answered. Always. He probably assumed I was just upset about the change of plans, that I would answer eventually, that we would talk after Christmas. He would find a way to smooth things over. He always did. When they got to the property gate, James slowed down. There was a car parked there, a black sedan, and a man beside the car. A big man, 40-something, security jacket, radio on his hip. James stopped the Range Rover and rolled down the window. The man approached and said, "Good afternoon. Can I help you?" James frowned. He said, "Help with what?" "This is my family's property. I'm going in." The security guard looked at a clipboard in his hand, then looked back at James and spoke. "I'm sorry, sir, but this is private property. Access is not permitted without authorization from the owner." James gave a humorless laugh. He said, "Man, I think you're confused. This house belongs to my mother, Bernice Walker. I'm her son, James Walker. We always come here." The security guard didn't change his expression. He said, "Sir, this property was sold yesterday. The new owner is Mr. William Abernathy. I have orders not to allow unauthorized access." There was a second of total silence inside the car. Sophia turned her head slowly to look at James. Harper, in the back seat, asked, "Daddy, why can't we go in?" James ignored his daughter. He said to the security guard, voice getting higher and sharp, "Sold? What are you talking about? My mother didn't sell anything. You're mistaken." The security guard kept his cool. He said, "Sir, I understand this may be a surprise, but I have the documentation right here. The property legally changed owners yesterday, December 23rd. If you wish to contest this, I suggest you contact your lawyer. But I cannot let you pass." James got out of the car. The rain soaked his hair instantly. He went to the electronic gate and typed the code into the keypad. 4 numbers. The code that always worked. The code he knew by heart. Nothing happened. The little light on the keypad blinked red. Invalid code. He tried again. Red. Again. Red. Sophia got out of the car, too. She approached James and whispered something the kids couldn't hear. He replied in a low voice, too, gesturing. The security guard stood there, watching, impassive. James pulled his keys from his pocket, the physical key to the gate, the one Bernice had given him years ago for any emergency. Jammed the key into the gate lock. It didn't turn. He tried to force it. Nothing. James said that was the moment reality hit him, cold and hard, just like that rain wetting his face. He looked at the security guard and asked, his voice shaking, "My mother, do you know where she is?" The security guard said, "No, sir, I do not have that information." James got back in the car, wet, shaking from cold and rage. Sophia got in beside him. The kids were scared now. Mason started crying softly. Harper held her brother's hand. Sophia grabbed her phone and dialed. No one answered. She tried again. Voicemail. She looked at James and said, "Your mother sold the house. She sold the damn house and didn't tell anyone." James started the car and reversed, leaving that gate. He was in shock. Complete shock. He couldn't process it. During the drive back to Atlanta, he tried calling me 20 more times, sent texts, nothing. "Mom, the code doesn't work. There's an armed guard at the gate saying it's private property. Did you sell the house? Do you have any idea what you've done? I have investors coming tomorrow. This is mine by right. Dad wanted it to be mine." Sophia sent texts too, full of desperation and anger. But I didn't see any of them, because my phone was on airplane mode, tucked in the drawer of the nightstand in the hotel room in Montego Bay. On the morning of December 27th, 3 days after arriving in Jamaica, I finally turned on my phone. I was sitting on the balcony, drinking coffee. The sun was already high. The sea, calm. I had slept well, feeling light. I pressed the power button on the phone. The screen lit up. The carrier logo appeared. And then it started. Non-stop notifications exploding on the screen. One after another, 50 missed calls, 63 text messages, 12 voicemails. I stared at the phone, taking a deep breath. Then I started reading. I started with the text messages, one by one. Sitting there on the balcony, coffee getting cold beside me, sun hitting my forehead. The first ones were confused, almost polite. "Mom, the code isn't working. Did you change it?" "Mom, there's a man here at the gate. He says the house was sold. Is this true? Pick up the phone, please." Then came the desperate ones. "Mom, for the love of God, call me back. We need to fix this. Did you sell the house? How could you do this without talking to me? I have investors coming tomorrow. Do you realize what you've done?" And then came the angry ones. "You are being selfish and irrational. Dad wanted this house to be mine. You know that. This is mine by right. You didn't have the right to sell. Sophia is having a nervous breakdown because of you. You destroyed her career." I stopped on that one, read it, reread it. This is mine by right. It wasn't. It never was. The house was in my name. The money was mine and Otis's. James never paid a dime for that property, but in his head somehow, it was already his. I kept reading. Sophia's messages were worse, more aggressive. "Bernice, have you lost your mind? Cancel this sale right now. You have no idea the damage you are causing. I lost clients because of you. James deserved this house. You are being cruel to your own son." And the last one, the one that made me squeeze the phone so hard my hand started to cramp. A real mother wouldn't do this. I took a deep breath, counted to 10, looked at the sea. The waves kept crashing on the sand, indifferent to human drama. The world kept turning. I scrolled up, looking for the older messages from the 23rd, before I had canceled the card. There was one from Sophia sent at 3:30 in the afternoon that day. "Bernice, I need to talk to you about the card. The catering didn't go through. They said it was declined. Can you fix this?" 3:30 in the afternoon, half an hour after she had tried to spend $8,000 of my money. There was another one from 5:20. "Bernice, was the card canceled? Is this a mistake? The wine shop couldn't process the payment either, and now they're charging a cancellation fee." Cancellation fee. She was worried about a cancellation fee. I took a sip of the cold coffee, looked at the horizon. A heron was flying low over the water, looking for fish. Free. Light. I opened the messaging app again, decided I was going to reply. Once. Just once. I typed slowly, choosing every word with care. "What was your father's is mine. I sold it. The catering money on my card has been reversed. Solve your problems with your own money." I pressed send. Blocked the number again. Blocked Sophia's again, too. Turned off the phone. Finished my coffee. Ordered another one from the waiter passing by. Went back to watching the sea. But while I was there, in peace, James and Sophia were in Atlanta, panic setting in. The party had been canceled, obviously. The investors were notified at the last minute. Sophia had to make up an excuse about a family emergency. The investors didn't like it. Not at all. One of them, a man named Richard Pemberton, owner of a venture capital firm, sent a dry email saying he was going to reevaluate the partnership with Sophia's company. They stayed in Atlanta on the 24th, trying to fix it. James called Mr. Abernathy, got his number through a contact. When he finally got to speak to him, James tried to negotiate, offered to buy the house back. Mr. Abernathy was polite but firm, said the property had been acquired legally and he had no interest in reselling, at least not at that moment. James then tried speaking to lawyers, consulted 3 different ones. All said the same thing: the sale was legal. Bernice was the sole owner. She had the right to sell whenever she wanted, to whomever she wanted. There was nothing James could do. That was when their financial situation started to truly crumble. See, James and Sophia had been living beyond their means for years. I didn't know this at the time, but I found out later. They had a big house in Buckhead, one of the most expensive areas in Atlanta. Rent was $5,200 a month, 2 financed luxury cars, tuition for the kids at a private school that cost $1,800 a month per child, expensive restaurants, designer clothes, trips, and debts, lots of debts. James had a problem I didn't know about either: gambling, online betting, casinos. He started small about 5 years ago: sports betting, online poker. In the beginning, he even won some money, but like every addict, he went deep, deeper and deeper, until the losses far outweighed the wins. He owed money to a lot of people: loan sharks, dangerous people. I found out he had debts exceeding $350,000, $350,000, money he borrowed from places and people that don't accept excuses. And Sophia? She knew everything. She knew about the debts, the addiction, and instead of seeking help, she decided to try and fix it her way. Forging documents. She had forged my signature on 2 insurance policies months earlier, trying to put me down as a co-signer for loans she wanted to take out in her company's name. It didn't work because the bank asked for in-person authentication, but she tried. They were sinking, and the lake house in their heads was the salvation. If they could somehow convince me to transfer the house to James's name, they could use it as collateral for massive loans, could sell it, take the money, pay the debts, start over. Only I sold it before they could execute the plan. On the 26th, the day after Christmas, they went to a hotel, a luxury hotel in downtown Atlanta. 4 stars, $340 a night. They didn't have that money, but Sophia put it on the credit card anyway. She told James they needed a place to think clearly and come up with a plan. The kids stayed in the hotel room watching TV while James and Sophia went out. They said they'd be back soon, that they were just going to take care of one quick thing. The quick thing, as came out in the investigation, was an illegal casino on the outskirts of Atlanta, in the basement of a warehouse in Doraville. James knew the place. He admitted he had been there before and deluded himself thinking he could win money fast, enough to at least pay for the hotel and buy time to think. They stayed there for over 12 hours. Harper and Mason stayed alone in the hotel room from 7 in the evening until almost 8 in the morning the next day. Harper, at 8 years old, tried to take care of her brother. She ordered food from room service with the card her mother had left, tried to calm Mason down when he started crying, asking where his parents were. She watched cartoons with him until they both fell asleep, hugging each other with the TV still on. Meanwhile, James lost another $23,000 at the casino. Money he didn't have. Money borrowed from people who were there. Sophia tried to stop him. They fought. She called him an idiot, weak, useless. He screamed at her, saying she was guilty too, that she was always spending money they didn't have. The police arrived at the casino around 6:30 in the morning, an FBI and state police operation. They arrested everyone, charges of illegal gambling, money laundering, writing bad checks. James and Sophia were handcuffed and taken away. I didn't know any of this while I was in Jamaica. I stayed there, peaceful, for another week, toured the town, visited a beautiful local market full of crafts, bought some little souvenirs for the grandkids, talked to people, ate delicious food, danced at a beach party with some nice Canadian tourists. For the first time in a long, long time, I felt alive. It was on January 3rd, exactly 2 weeks after I sold the house, that I received the call. I was coming back from a morning walk on the beach. The sun was still rising, painting the sky orange and pink. I had my phone in my pocket, on, but on silent. I felt it vibrate, looked. Unknown number, area code 404, Atlanta. I answered. A woman's voice, professional, tired, said, "Mrs. Bernice Walker?" I replied, "Yes, this is she." The woman spoke. "My name is Carol Henderson. I am a social worker with the Fulton County Department of Family and Children's Services. Do you have a moment to talk?" My heart started racing. I stopped walking, stood there in the sand, standing, with the sea behind me, the sun rising, and said, "What happened?" And that was when she told me. Carol Henderson had that voice that only comes from someone who has seen a lot of bad things. Tired but kind, professional but human. She told me everything, every detail, and with every word, I felt my legs getting weaker. James and Sophia had been arrested on December 27th. Charges of bank fraud, writing bad checks, participation in illegal gambling. They were in a clandestine casino when the police raided the place. Were handcuffed, taken to the station, booked like common criminals. But Carol said the worst part, the part that made the Department of Family Services intervene, was what happened to the children. Harper and Mason had been left alone in a hotel room for over 12 hours. 12 hours. An 8-year-old girl trying to take care of a 6-year-old boy. When hotel management finally entered the room, after noticing no one had left since the night before and there were suspicious room service charges, they found the 2 children sleeping hugged together on the bed with the television on. Harper woke up scared, crying, asking where her parents were. Mason had wet the bed during the night because he was afraid to go to the bathroom alone in the dark. I felt my legs give way. I sat on the sand right there, phone glued to my ear, free hand covering my mouth so I wouldn't scream. Carol continued. She said the children were taken to a temporary shelter, that James and Sophia had been released on bail the next day, bail paid by Sophia's father, but that the department had opened an investigation. That child abandonment was a serious crime, that the children could not go back to the parents until the situation was legally resolved. Then she asked the question that changed everything. Mrs. Bernice, Mr. James Walker listed you as the children's next of kin. We need to know if you are able and willing to take them in temporarily while the parents' legal situation is resolved. I stayed silent for a time that seemed eternal. Looked at the sea. The waves kept crashing. The sun kept rising. Life went on. I was 64 years old. I had just found peace. For the first time in years, I was resting, sleeping well. No worries, no weight on my shoulders. And now they were asking me to take 2 traumatized children, raise them, care for them. I could say no. Technically, I could. The children would be placed in foster care until James and Sophia resolved the situation. Or not. Maybe they'd be adopted eventually if the parents lost permanent custody. But they were my grandkids. Harper, Mason, babies I held in my arms, children I love, even if I hadn't been able to see them often because of their selfish parents. I took a deep breath, wiped the tears running down my face, and said to Carol Henderson with a steady voice, "I'm coming to get them. I'm flying back to Atlanta today." Carol seemed relieved. She gave me all the details, the shelter address, the documents I would need. She said she would prepare everything for my arrival, that the children would be told their grandma was coming. I hung up the phone, sat there in the sand for about 10 more minutes. Then I got up, brushed the sand off my legs, and went back to the hotel. Packed my bags quickly, went to the front desk, let them know I was leaving early. They were very kind, offered me a prorated refund, took a taxi to the airport. On the plane back, I couldn't sleep, stared at the clouds through the window, thinking about how life turns upside down in a matter of days. Thinking about James as a child, that good boy I raised. Thinking about how he turned into this man I don't recognize anymore. And thinking about the children, scared, confused, alone. I arrived in Atlanta at 9 p.m. on January 3rd, picked up my car from the airport parking lot, drove home, dropped the bags, showered, slept a few hours. The next morning, the 4th, I woke up at 6, got ready, ate something even without being hungry, and at 8:30, I was driving to the address Carol had given me. The shelter was in an old building, but clean, in a poorer area of Atlanta. There was a small playground out front, some colorful but faded toys. I parked, took a deep breath, went inside. Carol was waiting for me at the reception. She was a black woman, about 50 years old, short gray hair, reading glasses hanging on a chain. Tired face, but kind eyes. She shook my hand and said, "Mrs. Walker, thank you for coming so quickly." We sat in a small room. She explained the process. The children would be under my temporary custody while the parents' case was investigated. There would be hearings, evaluations, social worker visits to my house to check conditions. All very bureaucratic, but necessary. I signed papers, lots of papers, showed documents, proof of residence, proof of income, criminal background check that Carol provided quickly through their system. Then she said, "Are you ready to see the children?" I wasn't, but I said yes. Carol led me down a hallway. We passed other rooms, heard children's voices, a baby crying, TV on somewhere. The smell was disinfectant and cafeteria food. Impersonal, institutional. We stopped in front of a door. Carol knocked lightly, opened it. It was a small room with a few chairs, a low table with old toys, a barred window. And in the corner, sitting side by side on a chair too big for them, were Harper and Mason. My heart broke. They were wearing clothes that clearly weren't theirs. Donated clothes. Mason's t-shirt was big, falling off his shoulder. Harper's pants, too short. Their hair was clean but messy. And their eyes. My God, their eyes. Harper saw me first. She squeezed Mason's hand so hard I could see her tiny hand trembling. She didn't say anything, just kept staring at me, like she wasn't sure if I was real. Mason looked at me with those little brown eyes full of fear. He had an old teddy bear in his lap, hugged against his chest. I crouched down, got to their eye level. My linen dress touched the cold floor of that place, but I didn't care. Looked at my grandkids and felt a lump in my throat so big I could barely speak. Harper whispered, voice trembling, "Grandma?" I nodded. "Yes, it's me," she continued. And what she said next cut me in half. "Daddy said you stole his money and ran away. He said you weren't coming back ever again." I felt anger. So much anger. Anger at James for putting that in her head. For making these children think I had abandoned them. For throwing the blame for his own failures on me. But I looked at Harper, at that scared little face, and spoke with the steadiest, softest voice I could manage. "Your father is confused, honey. I never stole anything from anyone. I protected what is ours. And now I'm going to protect you." Mason started to cry, a soft, trembling cry. Harper was still holding his hand. She asked, "Are we going to live with you?" I said, "Yes, you're coming home with me today." Mason let go of his sister's hand and ran to me. He hugged me, pressed his little face into my neck, and cried louder. I held him, that little body shaking in my arms. Harper got up slowly and came to. She hugged me from the other side, hiding her face in my shoulder. We stayed there, the three of us hugging in that cold, sad room, while Carol watched from the door with watery eyes. After a while, I pulled back a little, wiped the tears from their faces with my thumbs, smiled, even though my heart was broken, and said, "Let's go home. Let's get your room ready. Let's make cookies. And tomorrow we'll talk about school, about toys, about everything. But right now, let's go home." Carol helped us with the few things the kids had. A small backpack with donated clothes, Mason's teddy bear, a coloring book for Harper. That was it. I put them in the car, buckled the seatbelts, got in the driver's seat, looked in the rearview mirror. Mason was already asleep, head falling to the side, teddy bear in his lap. Harper was looking out the window, quiet. I drove back home, my house, which was now going to be their house too. When we arrived, the sun was setting. That orange late-afternoon light was hitting the windows of the townhouse. I opened the door. They walked in slowly, looking at everything with that suspicious way of someone who doesn't know if they can relax. I showed them the room that would be theirs, the old guest room. It had a double bed. I was going to need to buy bunk beds, but for now, they were going to sleep together there. I put on clean sheets, fluffy pillows, a warm blanket. I made dinner, mac and cheese, simple, tasty. They ate slowly, in silence. Then they took a bath. I dressed them in clean clothes I still had here from when they were smaller and sometimes slept over. They were tight, but they fit. I put them in bed, sat on the edge. Harper looked at me and asked, "Grandma, are we going to see Daddy and Mommy?" I didn't lie. Said, "Eventually, yes, but right now they need to fix some things. And in the meantime, you stay with me. I'm going to take care of you. I promise." She nodded. Mason was already almost asleep again. I turned off the light, left the door ajar, went to my room, sat on the bed. And finally, alone, I let it all out. I cried for the James I lost, for the life I thought I'd have, for the innocent children paying for their parents' mistakes. But I also felt something new growing inside me. Determination, strength, purpose. I was going to protect these kids, even if it was the last thing I did. The first few weeks were the hardest of my life. And look, I've been through a lot. Worked 24-hour shifts at the hospital, cared for Otis when he was dying. But nothing prepared me to raise two traumatized children at 64. Mason had nightmares every night. He'd wake up screaming, sweating, looking for his mother. I'd run to the room, turn on the light, pick him up, and rock him until he calmed down. Harper didn't scream, but I knew she didn't sleep right either. I saw the dark circles under her eyes, saw her flinch every time a door slammed, every time the phone rang. On their second day at the house, Harper asked me if the police were going to arrest her too. I sat with her in the kitchen, held her hands, and explained that no, she hadn't done anything wrong, that none of this was her fault. She cried so much I had to hug her for almost half an hour until she could breathe right again. I had to buy everything: clothes, shoes, backpacks, school supplies. Both of them were going to have to enter the neighborhood school, a good public school, but very different from the fancy private school they attended before. I went to a big store, Target, and spent almost $2,000 on basics. Bunk bed, bedding with superhero designs for Mason, a lilac comforter with stars for Harper. Clothes, shoes, toothbrushes, everything. I adapted the house as I could. The guest room officially became the kids' room. Set up the bunk bed with the help of a neighbor, Mr. Patterson, who was very kind. Put shelves on the wall for toys and books. Bought a small nightlight that stayed on all night because Mason was afraid of the dark. The routine was exhausting. Wake up at 6 a.m. to make breakfast. Take them to school at 7:30. Come back home, do housework, go to the market, make lunch. Pick them up from school at 3. Help with homework, make dinner, give baths, put to bed, and start all over again the next day. I didn't have time for anything anymore. Didn't have time for me. But I didn't complain, because every time I looked at those kids, I remembered the state they were in when I picked them up at the shelter. And I knew it was worth it. 2 weeks after they came to live with me, Harper started to open up a little. We were in the kitchen making chocolate chip cookies. She was mixing the dough, tongue sticking out in concentration, when suddenly she stopped and said, "Grandma, why did Mommy and Daddy leave us alone?" I stopped greasing the pan, looked at her, and took a deep breath before answering, "Honey, sometimes adults make bad choices that hurt the people they love. Your parents made a very, very bad choice, but that has nothing to do with you. You didn't do anything wrong." She stayed quiet for a while, then said, "I miss them." My heart squeezed. I said, "I know, baby. And it's okay to miss them. They're your parents. But until they can straighten themselves out, you stay here with me. Safe." She nodded, went back to mixing the dough. Mason took longer to open up. He was smaller, more closed off. But with time, he started to trust. Started calling me Grandma without that tone of fear in his voice. Started asking to be held when he was tired. Started sleeping without waking up screaming every night. It was at the end of January, almost a month after the kids came to live with me, that I received the notification. I was in the kitchen making dinner, roasted chicken with potatoes. Harper and Mason were in the living room watching a cartoon. The doorbell rang. I opened the door. It was a process server. A white man, about 30, blue uniform, clipboard in hand. He said, "Mrs. Bernice Walker?" My stomach dropped. I knew what it was. I said, "Yes, that's me." He handed me an envelope, said, "You are being served with a lawsuit. Have a nice day," and walked away. I closed the door slowly, looked at the envelope. My hands were shaking. Opened it right there in the hallway. It was custody papers. James was suing to reverse custody of the children. He claimed I was too old and mentally unstable to raise 2 small children. that selling the lake house had been an impulsive and irrational act that proved my inability to make sensible decisions. That the children needed their parents, not an elderly grandmother who could die at any moment. I felt the anger rise. A hot anger. Different from that cold anger I felt when I sold the house. This was more visceral, more personal. How dare he? He who abandoned his own children for 12 hours in a hotel room to go gamble in an illegal casino. He who had debts of hundreds of thousands of dollars. He who used my credit card to spend $12,500 on wines and catering without asking my permission. And he was calling me incapable? I sat on the stairs, read the papers thoroughly. The hearing was scheduled for 6 weeks from then. March 9th, I was going to need a lawyer. A good lawyer. The next morning, after dropping the kids at school, I started making calls. Spoke to 3 different firms, explained the situation. 2 said they didn't take family custody cases because it was too complicated. The third one referred me to someone. Ms. Evelyn Thorne. Her office was in a modern building in downtown Atlanta. I arrived there the following Thursday for the initial consultation. The receptionist offered me coffee. I accepted. 5 minutes later, Ms. Thorne came out to get me. She was an impressive black woman. Tall, maybe 45 years old, natural hair in long braids, perfectly cut gray suit, heels clicking on the floor with authority. When she shook my hand, the grip was firm, confident. We sat in her office. She asked me to tell her everything, from the beginning, and I told her. Told her about Otis, about how we bought the lake house, about James and Sophia, about the message on December 23rd, about the sale, about the abandoned children, about Mason's nightmares, about Harper asking if she was going to be arrested, about everything. Ms. Thorne listened without interrupting, making notes on a tablet. When I finished, she stayed silent for a few seconds, then looked at me and said, "Mrs. Walker, I'm going to be straight with you. This case won't be easy. Judges tend to favor biological parents whenever possible, and James will use your age against you. He will paint you as an impulsive woman acting out of revenge." I asked, "Do you think I might lose?" She replied, "I think there is a risk, but I also think we have very strong arguments in our favor. Child abandonment is a serious crime. His debts, the gambling addiction, all that counts. Sophia's forgery too. And the fact that the children are adapting well with you, going to school, receiving adequate care, that weighs heavily." I asked how much it would cost. She said the initial consultation was free, but full representation would run around $15,000, depending on how many hearings were needed. $15,000. It was a lot of money. But I had the money from the house sale. $2,400,000 invested, earning interest. I could pay, and I was going to pay, because those kids were worth every penny. I hired Ms. Thorne on the spot. In the following weeks, she worked like crazy, investigated James and Sophia deeply, discovered things even I didn't know, discovered that James's gambling debts were even bigger than I thought, $387,000, discovered that Sophia had tried to forge my signature not on 2, but on 5 different policies. Discovered they owed 3 months' rent on the house in Buckhead and had been evicted. Ms. Thorne also spoke with Carol Henderson, the social worker. Carol gave a positive statement about the state of the children when they were found and about my response when I went to get them. She visited my house, saw the children were well cared for, well fed, going to school regularly. Ms. Thorne got copies of banking records showing James and Sophia's absurd spending. The $12,500 on my card, the hotel charges, everything. She built a solid case, very solid. But even so, I was nervous, because deep down, I knew James was right about one thing. I was old. I was 64. Did I really have the ability to raise 2 small children? Was I going to handle it physically, emotionally? The night before the hearing, March 8th, I couldn't sleep. Lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the house, the clock ticking, the wind hitting the window. And from the kids' room, the steady breathing of Harper and Mason sleeping. I had to win this battle. I had to. Because if I lost, those children would go back to a broken home, to parents who had already proven they didn't know how to take care of them. And I wasn't going to let that happen. The morning of March 9th dawned cold and gray. I woke up before the alarm rang, at 5:30. Lay there for a few minutes, staring at the ceiling, trying to calm my heart that was already beating fast. Got up, showered, got dressed with care. Chose a navy blue dress, simple but elegant. Comfortable flat shoes. Pearl necklace Otis's mother had given me. Hair in a low bun. Light makeup. I wanted to look respectable, reliable, capable. Left the kids with Mrs. Patterson, my neighbor. She had offered to stay with them during the hearing. Hugged Harper and Mason before leaving. Harper squeezed me tight and whispered, "Good luck, Grandma." Drove to the Fulton County Courthouse. Sweaty hands on the steering wheel, mouth dry. Parked, took 3 deep breaths, and went in. Ms. Thorne was waiting for me in the lobby. She was impeccable as always, black suit, leather briefcase in hand. She put a hand on my shoulder and said, "Mrs. Walker, are you ready? Remember, be honest, be direct, and don't let him get under your skin." I nodded. Ready or not, I had to do this. We entered the courtroom. It was smaller than I imagined. Beige walls, a few rows of benches, the judge's bench at the back, state and country flags on the sides. Smell of old wood and paper. James was already there. Sitting on the other side with his lawyer, a white man in a gray suit, red tie, open briefcase on the table. Sophia was next to James. Both were well-dressed, groomed, trying to look respectable. When James saw me, he looked away. Couldn't face me. The judge entered. A black man, about 60 years old, gray hair, serious face. We all stood up. He sat down, banged the gavel, and said, "Temporary custody hearing in the case of Walker versus Walker. You may be seated." The hearing began. James's lawyer spoke first. He painted a picture of James as a loving father who had made a momentary error in judgment, but was committed to recovering. He said James was attending Gamblers Anonymous meetings 3 times a week, that he had gotten a new job as a sales manager, that Sophia was working on rebuilding her career, that they had rented a modest but adequate apartment. Then he started the attack on me. He said I had acted on impulse and vengeance by selling the lake house, that this demonstrated emotional instability, that at 64 I didn't have the necessary physical energy to raise 2 small children, that the children needed parents, not a grandmother who, in his words, has already lived her life and should be resting, not raising children. I squeezed my hands in my lap, nails digging into my palms, breathed deep, didn't react. Ms. Thorne stood up when it was her turn, and she was devastating. She started with the facts, presented the banking records showing the $12,500 James and Sophia spent on my card without permission, showed James's gambling debts, $387,000, showed the 5 documents Sophia had tried to forge with my signature. Then she presented the social worker's report. Carol Henderson had written a detailed statement about the state of the children when they were found in the hotel, alone for 12 hours, scared. Mason having wet the bed from fear. Harper trying to take care of her brother at 8 years old. Ms. Thorne read excerpts from the report out loud. The room went silent. Even the judge stopped writing and listened, his face getting more serious. Then Ms. Thorne presented the follow-up report. The children had been visited by a social worker 3 times in the last 6 weeks. Each visit showed improvement. Mason didn't have nightmares every night anymore. Harper was getting good grades at the new school. Both were gaining weight, healthy, well cared for. Ms. Thorne looked at the judge and said, "Your Honor, Mrs. Bernice Walker did not act out of revenge. She acted to protect her assets from people who were abusing her trust. And when the children needed her, she didn't hesitate. She dropped her vacation, returned immediately to Atlanta, and assumed responsibility. At 64, she wakes up at 6 a.m. every day to make breakfast, take the kids to school, help with homework. She gave these children stability, security, and love. Meanwhile, their parents abandoned them to go gamble in an illegal casino." James tried to defend himself. His lawyer called him to testify. James sat in the witness chair. He was nervous, sweating, avoiding looking at me. His lawyer asked easy questions. James answered that he loved his children, that he had made mistakes, that he was changing, that he deserved a second chance. Then it was Ms. Thorne's turn to cross-examine him. She went straight to the point, asked about the debts. James stuttered, tried to minimize. She showed the documents. He couldn't deny it. She asked about the casino. James said he went just this one time. She presented records showing he had been to illegal casinos at least 15 times in the last 2 years. She asked about the $12,500 on my card. James said he was going to pay me back. She asked when. He couldn't answer. She asked why he left the children alone at the hotel. James started to cry. He said he didn't plan it, that the situation got out of control, that he thought he'd be back quick. 12 hours isn't quick. Sophia also testified. She tried to play the victim, said she was stressed with her career, that the sale of the house had destroyed important plans of hers, that she needed the children back to feel complete. Ms. Thorne asked about the document forgeries. Sophia said it was a misunderstanding. Ms. Thorne showed the documents, her signature next to mine, clearly forged. Sophia was speechless. After almost 3 hours of hearing, the judge asked for a 15-minute recess. We left the room. Ms. Thorne took me to a quiet hallway and said, "It's going well, very well, but be prepared. The judge will probably want to hear from you directly." She was right. When we returned, the judge called me to testify. I walked to the witness chair, legs shaking, sat down, put my hand on the Bible, and swore to tell the truth. The judge looked me straight in the eye. He asked about my health. I said I was healthy, no serious issues. He asked about my routine with the children. I explained everything. The 6 a.m. wake-up, school, meals, homework, Mason's nightmares. Then he asked the question I knew was coming, the question James and his lawyer were waiting for. The judge said, "Mrs. Walker, you are 64 years old. Raising 2 small children is demanding physically and emotionally. Do you have financial resources to support these children until adulthood? And do you believe you have the energy and capacity necessary for this?" The room went absolutely silent. I looked at the judge. Then I looked at James. He was staring at me now, for the first time. There was something in his eyes. I don't know if it was hope or despair. I looked back at the judge, raised my chin, and spoke with a firm, clear voice, without hesitating. "Your Honor, I have the sale of a property worth $2,400,000 invested in treasury bonds, earning monthly interest. I have a lifetime pension from the hospital where I worked for 38 years. I have a paid-off house and enough savings to guarantee these children will never want for anything. As for energy and capacity, I have the patience of someone who raised that ungrateful boy without help from anyone after his father got sick. I raised him alone, paid for his college, gave him everything he needed. And now, the money he wanted to use to impress investors at extravagant parties, that money is these children's college fund. I might be old, but I know what love, responsibility, and sacrifice are, and I am going to give these children everything their parents couldn't give. Stability." The silence that followed was deafening. James lowered his head. Sophia looked at him, then at me, with an expression I couldn't decipher. The judge wrote something down, stayed silent for about 30 seconds that felt like 30 minutes. Then he banged the gavel and said, "Permanent custody granted to Mrs. Bernice Elaine Walker." When the judge banged that gavel and said permanent custody granted, I felt my whole body relax at once, like I had been holding my breath for weeks and could finally let the air out. Ms. Thorne squeezed my shoulder. I heard Sophia let out a sound, half moan, half cry. James kept his head down. We left the courthouse. Ms. Thorne hugged me right there in the hallway and said, "You were perfect, absolutely perfect." I thanked her. Paid her fees that same week, $15,200. Every penny was worth it. James and Sophia were granted supervised visits, once a month for 2 hours at a family center. The first visits were tense. The children stayed quiet, uncomfortable. James tried to talk, but didn't know what to say. Sophia brought expensive gifts the kids looked at without much interest. With time, the visits got a little less awkward. Harper started talking about school. Mason showed drawings he had made. But when it was time to leave, they always ran to me, hugged me, ready to go back home. To our home. That was in March. Now it was September. 6 months had passed since the hearing, and life had found a new rhythm. It wasn't easy, but it was good. I was sitting on the porch of my house on a warm Saturday afternoon, late September. The sun was starting to go down, painting the sky orange and pink. I had a cup of iced tea in my hand and a book open in my lap, but I wasn't reading. I was looking at the yard. Harper was on the little playground Mr. Patterson helped me set up. She was swinging slowly, hair in a ponytail, feet pushing the dirt lightly. Mason was running after Biscuit, the dog we adopted 3 months ago. A brown and white mutt, floppy ears, tail always wagging. The kids picked the name, Biscuit because he was the color of a biscuit, according to Mason. I heard Mason's laugh when Biscuit jumped on him and licked his face. A genuine laugh. Free. The kind of laugh he didn't give when he came to live with me. Harper stopped swinging and shouted, "Grandma, can I give a cookie to Biscuit?" I smiled and said, "You can, but just 2, or he'll get sick." She ran inside. Mason followed with the dog. I stayed there alone for a few minutes, just listening to the sounds of the neighborhood. Cars passing slowly, neighbors talking in their yards, wind in the trees, sounds of peace. Life had changed so much. Harper was doing well in school, better even than at the expensive private school where she studied before. Her teacher, Ms. Rodriguez, had called me last week to say Harper had a talent for math and writing, that she was one of the best students in the class. I was so proud I cried when I hung up the phone, and there was the piano. Harper had shown interest in learning piano. I didn't have a piano at home, but the neighborhood church did. The church pianist, a sweet lady named Mrs. Jackson, offered to give Harper lessons for free. Every Tuesday and Thursday, after school, I took Harper to the church. She sat on that old piano bench, small fingers on the keys, and played. At first it was simple songs, basics, but now, after 3 months, she was already playing more complex things. She had rhythm, she had feeling. Mason had stopped having nightmares. It wasn't overnight. It was gradual. At first, he woke up screaming 4, 5 times a week. Then it decreased, 3 times, 2, 1, until there was a whole week without any nightmares, then 2 weeks. Now he slept all night, peaceful. He had started playing soccer at the neighborhood league. I took him to practice twice a week and to games on Saturday morning. He wasn't the best player, but he loved it. Ran after the ball with that energy only a 6-year-old has. When he scored a goal, even if it was by accident, he looked to the bleachers searching for me. And when he saw me, he smiled in that way that melted my heart. The house had transformed. What used to be a silent widow's townhouse was now a home full of life. Toys scattered around the living room, kid drawings on the fridge held up with magnets, school backpacks thrown in the hallway, noise of cartoons on the TV, laughter, silly fights between siblings. Life. I had gone back to attending church on Sundays, took the kids with me. We sat in the middle pew. Harper stayed quiet during the sermon, paying attention. Mason fidgeted a bit, but tried to pay attention too. After the service, they ran to the backyard where the other kids played. I talked with the ladies from church, drank coffee, felt part of a community again. It wasn't all perfect. There were hard days. Days I woke up too tired, feeling the weight of my age. Days Harper threw a tantrum and didn't want to do homework. Days Mason cried because he wanted to see his dad. Days I asked myself if I could handle 10 more years of this. But then I looked at those kids, saw how they had grown, how they were healthy, happy, safe, and I knew I would handle it because I had to. The noises from inside the house brought me back. Harper and Mason were back. Heard them laughing, talking to the dog like he understood every word. Got up from the porch chair and went inside. In the kitchen, Harper was giving treats to Biscuit while Mason held his collar. I said, "Let's make dinner? How about homemade pizza?" They both screamed yes at the same time. We spent the next hour making pizza. I prepared the dough, Harper spread the sauce, Mason put on the cheese and pepperoni. Biscuit sat near the table, looking with those begging dog eyes. The kitchen was a mess. Flour on the floor, sauce splattered on the table. But there was laughter. There was love. There was family. While the pizza baked, I went to get the mail I had forgotten to grab earlier. Opened the metal box in front of the house. Bills, junk mail, and a different envelope, brown envelope, handwritten, no return address. But I recognized the handwriting. James. I went back inside slowly. The kids were in the living room watching TV while waiting for the pizza to be ready. Went to my room, closed the door, sat on the bed. Opened the envelope with slightly shaking hands. Inside was a letter, 3 pages handwritten, tight script. The date at the top said September 15th, 2025. I started reading. "Mom, I know I don't have the right to write to you. I know I don't deserve your attention after everything I did. But I need to try. I'm at the state prison in Reedsville for 4 months now. I was sentenced to 2 years for bank fraud and child abandonment. Sophia got 1.5 years, but she's in another prison. We are going to divorce as soon as we get out. I'm not writing to ask for money or to ask you to visit me. I know that's out of the question. I'm writing because I'm attending Narcotics Anonymous meetings here, and one of the steps is to make amends to the people we hurt. Mom, I hurt you in ways I can't even list. I used you, disrespected you, put my addictions and my wife ahead of you, ahead of my own children. I left Harper and Mason alone in a hotel room because I was so desperate to win money gambling that I lost all my senses. I could have lost my children forever that day. I lost you. Here in prison, I work in the laundry detail. I earn a few dollars a day that I use to pay restitution to the victims of my scams. It's little, but it's what I can do. I also do therapy twice a week with a prison psychologist. I'm learning about addiction, about responsibility, about the choices I made. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve forgiveness. But I need you to know that I am sorry. I'm sorry for wasting the love you and Dad gave me. I'm sorry for becoming this man Dad would be ashamed to know. And I'm sorry, Mom, for making you feel you needed to sell the house you built together to protect yourself from me. You did the right thing. The house, the kids, everything. You always knew what was right. And I was always too dumb to listen. Please tell my children their father loves them, that their father made terrible mistakes, but is trying to be better. And when they are older, if they want to know me again, I will be here, waiting, ready to prove I've changed. Thank you for taking care of them. Thank you for being the mother and grandmother they deserve. With love and regret, James. I finished reading and stared at the letter for a long time. Tears were running down my face without me noticing. It wasn't the letter I expected. No requests, no empty excuses, just acknowledgement, regret. And maybe, just maybe, the beginning of real change. I folded the letter slowly, picked up my Bible from the nightstand, put the letter inside, marking a page. I wasn't going to reply yet. Maybe I'd never reply, or maybe in a few months, a few years, when I was sure the change was real, I'd consider it. But for now, the letter would stay there, kept safe, not forgotten, but not urgent either. Wiped my tears, got up, smoothed my dress, and went back to the kitchen. The pizza was ready. Harper had already taken it out of the oven with my help. Mason was setting the plates on the table. Biscuit was circling hopefully. We sat, ate, talked about the day, about school, about the soccer game next Saturday. And there, in that messy kitchen, with 2 happy children and a dog sniffing crumbs on the floor, I felt complete. Today is December 23rd, 2025. Exactly a year since that day, December 23rd, when I received the message from James cutting me out of Christmas. A whole year. I'm sitting here on the porch of my house again, but now it's different. The sun is setting, putting on that show of colors in the sky. Orange, pink, purple. There's a smell of cinnamon cake coming from the kitchen because Harper wanted to learn how to make her great-grandma's recipe. Mason is in there helping her, or rather, getting in the way and eating the raw dough when she's not looking. Biscuit is lying on my foot, snoring softly. And I'm here, with a cup of iced tea in my hand, looking at the yard and thinking about how life has changed. James is still in prison, still has 8 more months before he gets out. He writes to me once a month, letters always similar to that first one, talking about the meetings, about therapy, about the laundry work, never asking for anything, just telling, sharing. I replied once, about 3 months ago. It was a short letter. I said the children were well, that Harper played the piano beautifully now, that Mason had scored 3 goals in the last soccer game, that Biscuit was the most loving dog in the world, and that I hoped his change was real, but time would tell. He replied thanking me, said he understood my caution, that he also wanted to believe the change was real. Sophia got out of prison last month, served about 8 months of her sentence for good behavior. She moved to another city, Charleston, South Carolina, got a job at a small consulting firm. She called me once, about 2 weeks ago. It was a strange, tense conversation. She said she was sorry, that she was trying to rebuild her life, that she wanted to be better, asked if she could visit the kids eventually. I said maybe, in the future. When she proved with actions, not words, that she had truly changed, she accepted. We hung up. The supervised visits continue. James has the right to a monthly video call with the kids, monitored by the prison administration. In the first calls, it was uncomfortable. Long silences. James not knowing what to say. The kids answering with one-word answers. But in the last call, 2 weeks ago, Harper told him about a piano recital she's going to do at church for Christmas. And James cried. Cried tears of joy, pride, regret, all mixed together. And for the first time, I saw a glimpse of the boy I raised. A small, fragile glimpse. But there, I don't know if he will manage to stay clean when he gets out. I don't know if he will really change. Addictions are hard. I saw that in the hospital my whole life. Saw patients who swore they were going to stop drinking, doing drugs, gambling. Most came back, but some didn't. Some really changed. I want to believe James can be one of those who change. But I'm not going to bet my grandkids' safety on it. Not yet. Harper is turning 9 next month. She grew so much this year I had to buy new school uniforms 3 times. She is tall for her age, smart, determined. Has a notebook where she writes stories. Stories about princesses who saved themselves, about talking animals, about brave grandmas. She showed me one last week. The story was about a grandma who fought a dragon to protect her grandkids. I cried. Mason is turning 7. He lost his 2 front teeth and keeps blowing air through the gap, making funny noises just to see us laugh. He still has hard moments. Days he asks when he's going to see his dad again. Days he cries because he misses his mom. On those days, I sit with him, hug him, and let him cry. Then we talk. I explain that his parents need time to learn to be better parents, that this isn't his fault, that he is loved, and he seems to understand. At least a little. Life is good now. It's not the life I imagined when I retired. I had planned to travel, rest, maybe move to the coast, spend my days reading on the beach. Instead, I'm waking up at 6 a.m., packing lunchboxes, checking homework, taking kids to the dentist. I lost the lake house, that beautiful property me and Otis built with so much sacrifice. Lost the dream of a quiet retirement in the Caribbean. Lost the illusion that my son was going to be the man I raised him to be. But I gained other things. I gained Mason's laugh when Biscuit steals his sock in the morning. I gained Harper's tight hugs before sleep. I gained the pride of seeing her play piano at church while the whole congregation applauds. I gained the purpose of knowing these 2 children have a secure future because I made the hard choices. And I gained peace. For the first time in years, I sleep soundly because I know I did what had to be done. Some people criticize me. I know. There are people at church, in the family, who think I was too hard on James. That a real mother would have forgiven, would have helped financially, would have given more chances. There are people who think I should have sold the house and given him the money for him to pay the debts and start over. But those people weren't there. Didn't see the decades of disrespect. Didn't see the $12,500 spent on my card without permission. Didn't see Harper and Mason alone in that hotel room, scared, abandoned. I did what I had to do. Protected what was mine. Protected my grandkids' future. And if that makes me a hard mother, then so be it. I prefer to be a hard, present grandmother than a pushover mom who is negligent. The money from the house sale is still invested. $2,400,000 earning interest. I haven't touched almost anything besides what I needed to hire Ms. Thorne and to adapt the house. The rest is there, safe, untouched, divided into 2 trust funds that can only be accessed when Harper and Mason turn 18. One for each, $1,200,000 each. They will have college paid for, will have a start in life their father wasted, will have choices me and Otis never had, and if there's anything left when I die, it goes to them too. But I hope to use a little of it to live, to take them on trips, to create memories, to show them that money is a tool, not a goal. I heard the kitchen door open. Harper appeared with flour on her face, smiling. She said, "Grandma, the cake is ready. Come see." I got up. Biscuit got up too, wagging his tail, followed her inside. The kitchen was a mess, but the smell was wonderful. Cinnamon, sugar, butter. The cake was on the table, still warm, with that shiny glaze on top. Mason was next to it, licking a wooden spoon. I looked at that scene. My kitchen, my grandkids, our cake, our life. And I realized that, for the first time in a long, long time, the final balance was positive. So that's it. That's my story. The story of how I sold the house I built with my late husband, cut ties with my gambling addict son, and took custody of my grandkids. Some people think I did right. Some people think I was cruel. And you? What do you think? I don't know if I did everything perfect, but I know I did the best I could with the cards life dealt me. I protected what was mine, protected those who couldn't protect themselves. And I learned that sometimes love isn't giving everything a person asks for. Sometimes love is saying no. It's setting boundaries. It's letting a person fall so they learn to get up on their own. James still has a long road ahead. Maybe he'll make it. Maybe not, but that's on him. I already did my part. Now my part is taking care of Harper and Mason, giving them the childhood they deserve, the security they need, the love that should never have been taken from them. Today I live here in Atlanta, in my house full of life and noise and love. James is serving time in Reedsville, working in the laundry, attending therapy, trying to rebuild himself. Sophia is in Charleston, starting over from zero. And Harper and Mason are here with me, growing, laughing, living. They lost a lake house, but they gained a real home. And as for me, I learned that family isn't who uses you. Family is who stays when things get hard. Family is who hugs you through the nightmares. Family is who makes cinnamon cake with you on a December afternoon. And sometimes the family you choose, or that chooses you, is stronger than blood family. And you, what would you do in my place? Do you think I was right to sell the house and let my son face the consequences alone? Or do you think I should have helped him, given him one more chance? Write in the comments. I want to know your opinion. And write down what city you're listening to me from too. I'm curious to know where you all are. If my story touched you in some way, please click the like button. It helps more folks hear what needs to be heard. Every like helps a lot. Thank you for your kindness, truly. You have no idea how much it means. On the screen now you see another story I'm sure you'll like too. It's about a woman who discovered her husband had a secret family for 20 years. Click there to watch. You won't regret it. Oh, and if you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, don't forget to subscribe, all right? That way you won't miss the next stories. And ring that notification bell to get notified every time a new video comes out. Thank you for listening to me until the end, for accompanying me on this journey, for being here with me until the next story.